Good morning all and TGIF. It's a beautiful day here in South Carolina. It's February 25th, 2022, and I'd like to talk a little bit about some recent events. First one is Novak Djokovic. Some of you may have heard that he recently did an interview with the BBC. It's the first time he's spoken publicly since he was prevented from playing in the Australian Open. And I gotta say, it is baller.
Ultimately, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically, because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes. I do.
But as things stand, if this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes, that is the price that I'm willing to pay.
And if it means that you miss Wimbledon this year, again, that's a price you're willing to pay?
Yes.
Why, Novak? Why? Why don't...
Because the principles of decision-making on my body are more important than any title or anything else.
Djokovic does a great job of expressing himself eloquently on this subject. It was also great when the interviewer tries to spin the narrative with that emotional why, right? Why? As if it's completely ludicrous to think this way. And Djokovic just shuts that down with absolute integrity, assuredness, and really a stoicism. Because after all, he is giving up a lot. He is giving up a lot to stand by this principle. Now, my position on this subject really hasn't changed much since they started rolling these things out in record time. And it's simply this: they couldn't possibly have had enough time to test these enough to ensure efficacy and long-term safety. It's that simple. And therefore, I believe that I should have a choice as to whether I take them. I believe everyone should have a choice as to whether they take them. And I gotta admit, I've been getting more optimistic the last few months because, in the beginning, when you would try to make this case, you were labeled as selfish, science denier, everything under the sun. It was very difficult to even have a conversation about this with someone from the other side of the opinion. And at that point, it was all the narratives were projecting what would happen. And so it was very hard to have this conversation. But the last few months, the data has been coming in, and the data has been breaking for the skeptics. The CDC is finally acknowledging the risk of myocarditis and actually considering lengthening the interval between first and second shots, right? So progress there. Johns Hopkins University came out with a study saying that the lockdown effect was almost nil. So the data has been coming in, it's been breaking for the skeptics. You're feeling a little bit optimistic, but then you see something like this.
I had 103-degree fever every night. Woke up with chills and pool of sweat. Headaches were massive, coughing profusely. And it got to a point that right before New Year's Eve, I was in the hospital New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. That's how I brought in the new year. And they told me, had I not been vaccinated, I wouldn't be here.
Now, how can you argue with that? I mean, if you're on your deathbed and the treatment you took that was supposed to prevent you from getting there is what you thank for saving your life, you can't argue with that. Logic and reason aren't going to do it. Data's not going to do it. If that's the mentality out there, we're really up against it. I'm hoping that's more of a media narrative and that out in the world, there's a little bit more common sense on this subject, but we'll see. And finally, let's talk about Canada.
You're now attacking different older people. No violence! Hey, you don't have to hit him like that!
Move back! Please.
But you guys are beating him, what the fuck? I know.
Please,
What's going on in Canada is absolutely insane. In light of what we just talked about, in light of the data that's coming in, right? There's absolutely no reason to tear apart your country, tear apart your society, right, for these treatments. Absolutely no reason.